All right, we're going. We're good.
Next.
Okay, so our scenario was you've been asked by a colleague to be a peer reviewer on an interview protocol that they have developed on a research topic that falls within your area of expertise. After agreeing to review the interview protocol, you discover the purpose of the study and interview questions are very similar to a study you are about to conduct. Should you perform the peer review of the interview protocol? Why or why? So, yeah, I guess we'll start with the would you or would you not, and then we'll go into the other stuff.
So to be clear, I think our job right now is just to discuss the ethical ramifications of why or why not.
Correct.
I guess the only ethical dilemma that would be, in my opinion, is the fact that the project that you're reviewing is similar to a project that you're doing. So there could potentially be a conflict of interest in the sense that you may or may not want that other project to be done prior to yours getting out or something of that nature. So, I mean, anybody have any other comments on that?
Well, yeah, it's along the same lines. I felt like the same. I actually looked at this document on the Committee of Publication Ethics. So they gave a bunch of reasons why not ethically you should agree or not agree to some things. Obviously, to me, from a personal standpoint, try not to be biased. I would think you obviously wouldn't want somebody to publish something on your topic before you, because from a competitive standpoint. But I also have to think of the bias because you don't know, I guess, until you read it, what approach they're taking on the same subject. So obviously, if you review it, you may have some bias based on the research that you've done or the perspective that you're taking in your research and the perspective they're taking. So I would be concerned about, obviously, a conflict of interest in that sort.
Right. Yeah, I think I had the same thing with the conflict of interest because, it's hard to not have an opinion about something that you're doing. And also, you don't want to taint their research either. I mean, it's okay to do stuff on the same topic because, especially if you're not using the same subjects, but you don't want to be like, oh, well, maybe you should do this or that and try to change completely what they're doing. Just because they're similar doesn't mean that they're going to fight each other either.
Exactly. And that's what made this scenario pretty interesting for me to evaluate because off the top, I didn't see any problem. And I guess one of the questions is, if I were in that scenario, what would I do? I would probably review it because there's nothing saying that because one article is published on a topic, then another one can't be. B, as a expert reviewer or someone who's asked for this review, because I'm studying the same subject matter means that I would probably be a really good person to review this other article because I'm familiar with the subject matter. So the conflict of interest was me trying to find something wrong with the scenario per se, but off the top, when I read this situation, when I read our prompt, I said, yeah, I would absolutely review it. Then again, I mean, based on the things that I just mentioned, I think it would be a positive to have me reviewing it. And then again, you're helping contribute to the body of knowledge on the subject matter that obviously you're interested enough in to be doing your own research. So
right. I mean, I think for me, I kind of took the approach of, well, why not review it? Because if it is so similar, maybe you could end up joining forces. Two minds are better than one sometimes. And, so maybe their questions might be able to help your study. And why not, maybe combine the two studies together if they're so closely related. So if you can be objective and, not be able to inject that bias and take it from a standpoint of, let me look at it, give my opinion, and, maybe we could work together on this. Because
but the other thing that you mentioned is reviewing a study or reviewing this piece of research and having suggestions. I mean, that's
Mm-hmm.
exactly what the review process is for, to
Right.
opportunities to potentially improve the study. So the fact that it's on something that I'm also studying makes me, in my opinion, makes me a really good researcher, a really good
Mm-hmm.
reviewer, because I'm already in the literature. I'm already up to date on what this study is supposed to be about.
Right.
I mean, I agree with what you guys are saying. I mean, I definitely think that the expertise in the subject area is going to some extent make you a good reviewer, but I think, especially for debate purposes, I kind of looked at it from the other way. I mean, it is good to have experience, but in my opinion, I just feel like it's almost impossible to avoid bias when you're looking at the same thing. I mean, I just don't know that you'd be able to provide like a fair and unbiased opinion when we talk about like source triangulation and method triangulation. We do all these things to have someone with an outsider's perspective come in and read it from an unbiased perspective. So how do you have someone so closely involved in the subject matter or in the project in some sorts and expect them to have a free and open mind? I mean, I know I did like phenomenology for my project, and that's kind of the whole basis is having an open mind. And I just don't know that that's possible if you're conducting the same study, let alone from a competing standpoint, but just
Right. Well,
generally looking at information. I don't know that you could have an unbiased opinion.
Well, that's kind of where I was like, well, you know, if it is such a similar study, why do two different studies? Why not, you know, combine it and make it one better study instead of like maybe potentially two mediocre studies? Especially if you're going to end up in the same subject pool, you know, depending on like where you're at. Like if you're in a small area and you only have so many people that you can interview, you're going to end up interviewing the same subjects. Like at that point, and it's kind of no point in doing two studies.
Yeah, but for me,
combined forces, however, you're not the appropriate person to review that question. You know what I'm saying? If you read it and like it, you could easily combine forces to work on the same project. But at that point, you have to take yourself out of a reviewer role, because the purpose of the editor or the reviewer is to.
Right. I think this was just to do a peer review. It's just the peer review. It's not like the actual full on like review. It's just like your colleague saying like, here, can you take a look at this before I send it off, type of deal.
And to me, one of the things that you brought up, the word unbiased, I hear what you're saying, trying to spur on some conversation here. I don't know that an unbiased, or I guess maybe what are we using to define the word unbiased? Because I mean, I could review a paper on rocket science tree, but I can't give you, I wouldn't be able to provide any valuable insight because I know nothing on the subject matter. So the fact that I'm researching the subject matter, in my opinion, makes me a better reviewer and someone whose opinion would be more valid on the subject because I am already investigating that same subject.
But it's not tricky, the subject matter that I like. Sorry to cut you off. It's not the subject matter. I mean, the point is to pick a reviewer who has expertise in the subject, but you mean specifically like the subject of the study. Like I can pick someone who is a program director because they know a lot about athletic training and education, but I might not necessarily want to pick somebody who's investigating student-centered learning or investigating that specific of a topic. Like
and that's what I was saying. That's where this prompt gets tricky, because they mentioned that I or the person that's being asked to do the peer review is doing a similar study with almost identical research questions. That to me is the tricky part of it.
Right.
And as a peer reviewer, I think that the most important part of that process would be to disclose that information fully from the beginning and make sure that there's full disclosure in saying, oh, I would absolutely love to be a peer reviewer. Just to let you know, on my first glance, your research questions are very similar to a study that I'm doing, and your interview questions are almost identical to the interview questions that I'm using for my project. So I'd be more than happy to look over it for you, but you may want to find another reviewer as well.
I think you nailed it for the second question. I mean, it's basically how would you handle it. I mean, the biggest part is disclosing it, obviously, to the author, what you're doing. And then, I mean, you also looking at maybe, I don't know what their purpose is, whether they're publishing it in a journal or whatnot, but it's helpful to maybe look at the journal and see what they consider a conflict of interest, because they obviously publish those things. So, you know, if they know they're going to publish in the Journal of Athletic Training, looking into what the Journal of Athletic Training considers a conflict of interest to make sure that you're disclosing that on both ends. So there's, you know, no conflict for you personally.
Yeah, and I think as long as you go about it professionally and just say exactly what Q said, I don't think there should be an issue. You know, they might be a little offended that you guys are doing the same project, but, you know, there should also be that mutual understanding of it's in the best interest of the situation to maybe not research, like, to maybe be like, you know, I don't know that you want me to do this for you.
Yeah, and I think that disclosure also helps prevent one party from feeling like, oh snap, he stole my idea or something like that.
I mean, yeah.
That full disclosure from the beginning helps keep intact the academic integrity of both projects. Right.
Well, and especially since it seems like they're in different stages of writing and the research process. So, I mean, especially if they're in the early stages and they're like, oh, I didn't know that you were going to do this. You know, they may turn around and say, you know what, let me change up what I'm doing. So that way, like, I can maybe take this the next step, or, you know, do something different, especially if it's like a student research study. You know, they're going to want to do maybe something different if you're already knee deep in interviewing or getting ready to interview type of deal.
I can dig it.
Early bird gets the worm.
Yeah, pretty much. It's the way research is.
You feel like we answered the two questions?
No, I mean, we talked about how we can handle it, obviously, disclosing it. I mean, I think you would always suggest alternate reviewers too. If you really just don't feel comfortable with it after you read it, you could always, you know, suggest a colleague of yours that may not be working on the same study, but may have similar levels of expertise as an option too. So
right.
You're not leaving them it sounds like they already accepted in our scenario. They already accepted the job prior to this scenario. So, you know,
well, yeah, I think they would have to have selected it to be able to know that the interview questions and the research questions are similar. So at that point, I think that the course of action would just be full disclosure.
Yeah, I think that would be appropriate. Because then that gives the person the option to say, you know what, I appreciate the offer. I'm happy that you said that you would do it, but I think I want somebody else to do it.
Right. So, like I said, you could possibly give them suggestions so they're not high and dry.
Yeah. Or if you give full disclosure and then politely decline, like it's not a personal matter at that point. It's a professional matter.
Right.
You know? So they shouldn't have any reason to take it personally.
I like it.
Mm-hmm.
I like it.
I think that is it. So I'm going to hit the stop recording